Well, a reality star from the Real Housewives of DC, Kat Omenay, who claims she did have a fling with Prince Harry, doesn't claim anything, it was true, says she's been whitewashed from history and doesn't recognise the party prince she once knew. Kat joins me now, along with royal correspondent of Vanity Fair, Katie Nicholl, and Fox News contributor, Geraldo Rivera. Welcome to you to this stellar panel, I must say.
Hey, Piers.
And thank you, Geraldo, for joining us from across the pond. I'll come to you in a moment. Kat, I want to talk to you because this book that's coming out, Spare, is supposed to be Harry's story. But I suspect we're going to get a very sanitised version of anything which is awkward for him. And it'll just be more of what we've been seeing now for the last year and a half, which is just constant attacks on his family and the media.
Or a total snooze fest.
Right.
I mean, you know, the title, I love the title thing, it's a great title. But, you know, how much he's influenced about how he wrote it and what's in it, who knows?
You were 34 when you met a young 21-year-old Harry.
Yeah.
So a bit of a Madonna situation going on there.
Really?
Well, she likes the toy boys, doesn't she?
Well, yeah, I was criticised because I didn't really care about age.
You had a little fling with him.
Yeah.
It was well documented, and we've got pictures of you there. What was he like then, as a young guy?
Just really, really, really funny, a total gentleman, totally down to earth, normal. And
Did he carry any of this enormous baggage, which he now appears to have all the time? Because he seems just completely miserable.
He did at the time. Well, he seems miserable
No, I mean, now he just seems completely miserable all the time. This freedom he saw doesn't seem to make him remotely happy.
I mean, what I saw with him at the time, he was desperately searching for freedom and privacy. And yet what he's done is completely turned the whole situation full circle.
Right.
And now he's got no privacy and no freedom.
Well, they invade their own privacy every 10 minutes. That's the sort of irony of this position. I mean, Katie, we've talked a lot about this. And the reason we keep talking about it is because on Thursday there'll be another dump of 3 more episodes in this Netflix snooze fest, which a lot of it is very boring.
You stay awake for it.
Well, yeah, it is boring, actually. It's very self-indulgent, very narcissistic. But in the middle of all this, there will be more barbs, we know, at the royal family and at the media.
You know,
and they'll play the oppressed victims.
They will. It's really interesting hearing Kat say that, actually, because I think when you look at those pictures of Harry partying, and I started my career as a royal correspondent because I ended up at a party with Prince Harry and, you know, drinking a bottle of vodka and having a great time, and he seemed like a very fun guy. But it's interesting hearing you say that he seemed like someone that sort of wanted to hide away from the media, who wanted to have his private life. And I think that is the massive contradiction in all of this. But as I unpick his complaints and this resentment, and it's bitterness. At the heart of this is bitterness about the institution, bitterness about how he's portrayed in the media. And I think now that he's actually named William in this latest trailer, and I think clearly William and Kate and the Sussex's relationship with William and Kate is going to come under scrutiny. I think there's a lot of sibling rivalry at the heart of all this. I think Harry, and the fact that his book is called Spare, has resented being the spare for a long time. And I think we're going to hear much more on that particular
I agree with you. Geraldo, across the pond, it seems to me a lot of Americans are as fed up with them as we are. I think you're still hanging in there as being not necessarily a fulsome supporter, but a more tolerant observer of all this. What do you make of it all?
Well, first of all, I want to say I thought of you, Piers, when Harry Kane missed that shot. I felt very bad for you and for England.
Thank you.
You know, in terms of the Netflix documentary and Harry and Meghan, you know, and their participation and, you know, their ongoing soap opera, I really do feel for them. And I think that the vitriol being heaped on them, the scorn is so snobby and snotty. It's having absolutely the opposite effect. I believe that they are generating some sympathy now, not because of what they're doing on the Netflix show, as much as reaction to the British tabloids and this incessant, constant, you know, criticism. There is no doubt in my mind that they are telling the basic truth. Maybe there's a shot here that should not have been used, a stock footage of photographers and so forth. But I think the general truth emerges. They seem sincere. They seem beleaguered. They seem,
Geraldo,
in many ways,
I cannot believe what I'm hearing.
Deeply
I've got to be honest with
disappointed.
you. You are one of the people I most respect in American television news. You're a hard-bitten journalist. You're a war correspondent. And you've fallen for this guff with these two. Hook, line and sinker. Because they're the least sincere people I think I've ever met in my life.
You're
She
too
in particular,
cynical.
she's an actress. She's playing a role.
She's a good actress.
My brother, I told you, Piers, I told you how I followed Prince Harry into Helmand Province in Afghanistan, and how the American Marines there and the British personnel that were still there after he had left all considered his service there to be honorable, even heroic.
No question.
So I come, as a war correspondent, I come with that bias. Here's a guy who served his country honorably, put his own life on the line. He married a woman who, for the first time in British royal history, was of mixed race. So the issue of racism, and here Harry's girl straight out of Compton and all that kind of baloney, they have been assailed. I feel for them because they have been targeted in a way that I feel is very, very unfair.
Yeah, but you see, I would argue they haven't been targeted in the way that I think a lot of Americans have been led to believe they were targeted. There was no racism towards them in the mainstream media in this country. There wasn't. The papers here were euphoric about this couple.
The Daily Mail just did 20 pages on the Netflix documentary. 20 pages.
Yeah, but that's because. Yeah, but that's because.
This is obsessive.
Yeah, but Geraldo, that's because
this is a colonoscopy.
These two sought freedom and privacy in America, and all they've done since they got there is cash in on their royal titles afforded to them by an institution they despise and are trying to ruin, and they're making hundreds of millions of dollars constantly trashing their family. When you talk about Iraq, and Afghanistan. My brother served in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? And in fact, my brother-in-law taught William and Harry at Sandhurst Military Academy. So I absolutely respect his military service. But if my brother, notwithstanding his heroic war record in Iraq and Afghanistan, went on national television every 10 minutes, dumping all over my family, that would be a very short conversation next time I saw him. You just don't do that kind of thing to families, do you?
Well, where is the kindness? Where is the
their
sensitivity?
kindness?
When here you have a young couple trying to find their way, and extraordinary situations with scrutiny that is so absolutely intrusive, they don't have a moment to breathe. Now he is the spare. He is the one that was designated to take over when I understand all that, and I understand the frustration of that. I mean, theoretically, but I really do believe that your lack of kindness to them is laid bare, Piers. You can't have such a visceral viciousness toward them.
Here's the irony.
Geraldo, they're just trying to pave their way in the world.
Here's the irony. My response to them is driven by their serial unkindness and viciousness to the royal family, and their deliberate attempts now to not only attack their family, who is a beloved family in this country, but to actually destabilise and potentially bring down the British monarchy. And as a monarchist who loves the royal family
and the
institution,
that is preposterously overstated.
It's their unkindness.
They're not going to bring down the British monarchy.
Well, it might, actually.
They're not going to bring down the British monarchy.
It might.
They will not. Why? What mechanism will
I'll tell you why. Because they're
this centuries-old institution.
Because their constant framing of the royal family as a bunch of nasty, callous racists is beginning to hit home in America. It's hitting home in the Commonwealth. People are believing this. They're not producing any actual evidence to support the racism claims, all the other mental health
when you
claims.
Have the headline literally read "Harry's new girl," almost straight out of Compton.
Right.
Come on, Piers. Compton is, for your viewers not familiar with this area of Los Angeles, is like Harlem in New York. There's a lot of nice places in Compton, but generally it's regarded as a home of rap and
Compton is also the place.
Urban problems.
I thought that was an unfortunate headline, but the piece that accompanied it was euphorically praiseworthy. And the truth is, she comes from an area about 5-6 miles from Compton, and Compton produced, as far as the British audience is concerned, produced Serena and Venus Williams. So they wouldn't see it in a particularly negative way. They think, oh, that's the place the Williams sisters come from.
All right, even speaking of Serena and Venus, you put it in a racial context. Here she is, a mixed-race actress, has no familiarity. I mean, she wasn't debriefed by Sarah Ferguson, as far as I know, or by really anybody who could guide her into the intricacies
what about her own
of
husband?
The etiquette and so forth. She was hung out. Well, I
He
think
can't
Harry
advise
can do
her.
what Harry can do, but he's a guy. It's not like she didn't have someone say, "Here's how you curtsy." She didn't have someone to say. And by
got
every
given
account, they loved Queen Elizabeth.
No, hang on.
They loved and
She
they
literally,
honored the
Geraldo,
sovereign.
you're believing the bullshit. She literally got given a massive dossier explaining all these things. It's now been revealed. Most of what they say in this Netflix thing is completely untrue.
She had the Queen's Lady in Waiting.
Yeah, if you can't
She had the
have
Queen's
hang on,
Lady.
well,
it seems
Well, she had
to
the
me
Queen's
that-
Lady.
Let's go back to Geraldo. Hang on. Geraldo, just finish that point. I think you're
It seems
falling
to me
for
that
this
you have a
act.
chip on your shoulder toward them, Piers. It seems to me that you have an anger inside you that I don't know what the source of it is. But I think that, for example, to allege without proof that this couple is imperiling the British monarchy is a grotesque overstatement
I don't think
of
it
their
is.
historic significance.
Yeah, I don't.
Because of what? Because of what?
Because of the-
and,
well,
and do you deny that race
specifically-
played any role?
Yeah, but
do you
Geraldo,
deny that race
specifically-
played any role in the way that they were treated?
Specifically, the allegations of racism against the royal family for which they produced zero evidence. All they've done is smear the entire family, and that is
it not a
beginning to
fact?
damage them
Is it not a
lot.
fact that? Well, I think that this was a great lesson for not just the British people and the Commonwealth, but here in the United States, a great lesson in the need for sensitivity, in the need to have when you have a progressive step like this, that for the country to embrace them. I think that Harry would like nothing better than to go and to help. I heard you were talking with the labor leaders earlier about the unrest and the economic difficulties.
Yeah.
I'm positive Harry and Meghan would like to be part of the effort.
Geraldo,
just
do
as
me
the
a
great
favour. They're
Queen
living in a
did,
Californian
to soothe
mansion.
People.
They've got no interest in helping in the cost of living crisis over here. You've drunk the Sussex Kool-Aid.
I think that if you gave them if the reception had been a bit more understanding, if you had
We
given them a
couldn't have
little
been
bit
more positive to them.
of a fair shake.
We couldn't have been more
You
positive
can't have
to them.
every tap. How do you feel? You and I have had our own adventures over our long public lives. How would you feel if every day you woke up, every single tabloid in the country was tearing you apart or was scrutinizing
Yeah, but Geraldo,
you in a way
they weren't.
that was
They
almost
weren't.
surgical in its
Actually,
detail?
the coverage was incredibly positive. I remember it well.
Yeah, until it wasn't, Piers. The narrative did change.
All right. Well,
But
look, Geraldo, let me just say,
the
Geraldo.
narrative
Let me just say goodbye to
changed.
Geraldo. Geraldo, you've been brilliant, as always, as a guest. I love the way you speak your mind.
Oh,
I
Piers,
love
you're
the way
great.
you never compromise when you have a belief about something. I appreciate you joining the show. Thank you very much. All right, let's get a reaction to this.
I just want to make the
A
point
lot of
that the
Americans,
narrative-
by the way, will agree with Geraldo.
They do. But the narrative did change. But it didn't just change because newspaper editors sat there saying, right, now let's put the knife into
No.
her. It changed because their behaviour changed
Yes,
for the
they
worse.
became a bunch
they
of
became
rank
very,
hypocrites.
They became very hypocritical.
Preaching about the environment,
Absolutely.
using private jets, preaching
Absolutely.
about poverty, throwing $500,000
and
baby showers.
By the way, they've made some pretty damaging allegations in this if the trailer's anything to go by. I mean, the idea that, the palace were briefing against them. Well, I know from my experience covering this beat for a long time that their press aides were doing everything they could to keep those negative stories out. They were. So there's potentially quite damaging allegations in all of this. And Geraldo mentioned proof. Well, are we going to see any proof? Are we going to see any
No,
evidence
we're not.
from them
We're
over
not.
the next 3
We're not.
episodes?
Kat, what are your thoughts now? I mean, if you bumped into Harry, what would you say to him?
I just don't know whether I actually even recognise him anymore. I mean,
Has it changed so much?
I mean, personality-wise, because when I watched him with the show, I just thought, wow, it's almost like, and my mother will really hate me for saying this, but it's almost like she's got like a spell over him, and that's why I don't recognise him, because he used to be so down to earth and normal, and there's so little of him I actually recognised.
Joanna Lumley has come out with an interview with The Times in which she says that she's horrified by the way she talks about women specifically, but I think it can extend to men as well, that you can become too much of a victim. You start to celebrate victimhood. You lose the strength. And she believes that this generation is losing the strength of previous generations. She was talking about women, but I think it applies to men as well, that there's almost a celebration of playing a victim.
Right, but I mean, he would never in a million years have, back in those days, have ever been that person to do the show.
No, I mean, looking at the front pages
Ever.
we've got up here, this is the coverage of when they got engaged. It couldn't have been more euphoric. Same for the wedding. They had 18 months of great press coverage. They got a lot of attention because they're the biggest stars in the country when you marry into the royal family. Anyway, we'll leave it there. There are lots of different views. We'll have all these views on Piers Morgan Uncensored. That's the whole point of the show, is that we will invite people to have different views to mine and to challenge mine. That's great. Doesn't mean I'm wrong. Thank you both very much indeed for coming in. Still ahead. Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Breaking news tonight. The Queen, after such an amazing day at the start of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, has sadly tonight announced that she will not be attending the Thanksgiving service, of course, in her honour for her 70-year reign at St Paul's Cathedral tomorrow. She will, however, be lighting the first beacon for the beacon, which is going to roll out, of course, across the country. So I'm hoping that means she's not too bad. It just means she can't travel at the moment, because Windsor Castle to St Paul's is quite a hike at 96 when you've got mobility issues, and clearly suffering some discomfort, as the palace has said in their statement. Well, I'm joined now in the studio by Countess Hitchingbrook, Julie Montague, author of The New Royals, and royal commentators, Katie Nicholl from Vanity Fair, and Kinsey Scoville. Welcome to you, Kinsey. You were so excited to see me earlier, I thought I would double your excitement and bring you from the Fox studio to here, so welcome.
Thank you so much. I am a huge fan.
Well, I'm a big fan of yours too now, so that's two of us. To start with you, Katie, if I may, this is not good news. Whichever way we try and dress this up, for the Queen to miss the big Thanksgiving service, she's a big churchgoer, a big believer.
Well, she's the head of the church.
Yeah.
So it's a
and
big
for her
it's a
not
big
to
deal.
be there is a big deal. What do we read into this?
OK, so I'm going to preface it by saying it is a shock. I know of people tuning in this evening and thinking, oh, gosh, you know, this is not good. It's not great. But when I came on your show a few weeks ago, I said to you, I was told by a source close to the royals that nothing was certain.
Yes.
Because, as you pointed out, she really wasn't very well. So the fact that we've had 2 balcony appearances today, the lighting of the beacons this evening, I think suggests there's no need for alarm bells to be ringing. However, it's going to look very strange. And as soon as I heard that news, I thought, do you remember in 2012? And the Duke of Edinburgh wasn't at that service of Thanksgiving, and how strange it felt.
Yes.
And I just think when you take away the Queen from a service of Thanksgiving to thank for her life, it's going to look very strange.
Well, also, it's a little bit sort of cursed, this event now, Julie, because we've already had the Archbishop of Canterbury pull out because he got COVID. He was supposed to be officiating. Prince Andrew, whose appearance in itself was going to be very controversial, I think, because last time he appeared with the Queen was at Prince Philip's funeral, and people didn't really like it, the fact that she was appearing to sort of accept him back into public life. So he was due to be there, but he's also tested positive for COVID. So there's a lot going on.
There is. It's going to look very empty, I think, tomorrow at the service, because now the Queen won't be there. Prince Andrew won't be there as well. And I do think that there might be, that moment of awkwardness, because then you have Harry and Meghan coming, and we know that they obviously still have a great relationship, as they say, with the Queen, but the Queen will be missing. So I think there's going to be this moment of, what is going to happen?
In there.
Exactly. Who are they going to be sitting next to?
No question. I was told by a very good source it was pretty tense today, that behind the scenes, apparently, there was some disquiet from palace officials that Meghan and Harry turned up apparently 15 minutes late, not for the actual start of the parade, but 15 minutes later than they were supposed to. And apparently it was all quite frosty behind the scenes, and the rest of the family went out in the garden and were milling around, and they just disappeared. So there's already a lot of tension there, and the only glue, it seems, in this whole tension is the Queen.
Absolutely.
And she's now not going to be there. So we're going to have a bit of a drama tomorrow morning, potentially, in a church where there aren't many of them, and the ones who are going to be there don't get on.
I agree, and I think that it's really important to the Queen that the family is united. I think it's important to her because she's concerned about Prince Charles, and she wants everybody to accept him, and she wants there to be healing and peace. So I'm concerned about tomorrow as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's just hope it all goes peacefully and well, but it's not looking particularly good, is it, given all that's been going on? I just want to go through some of my highlights. I was right there at the palace today covering it for Fox in America, and it was very moving the whole day. It was very inspiring. It felt me very proud to be British, actually, I have to say. It showed the country at its best. It was a beautiful sunny day. and the Mall was absolutely teeming. The atmosphere was fantastically positive. So after all the mayhem of the pandemic, and given that the country is ravaged by inflation at the moment, many people are really feeling the pinch. It was a great celebration of what it is good to be British, and I love that. But there were some heroes and villains today. Inevitably, the villains were led by radical vegans who decided to try and ruin the party by throwing themselves over railings and lying, pretending to be dead on the floor in front of some of the military as they went by. They were immediately flatlined by, I think, meat-eating police officers. I don't know what it is with vegans, other than they're permanently angry, and dare I suggest, they're hangry, because they're never having a good meal. And this is what happens when you don't eat a balanced diet. You literally go nuts. So they tried to ruin it. They got removed. In my heroes category, you can't get past little Louis, who's Kate and William's youngest, who basically spent his entire time on the balcony pulling faces. We did a montage of his greatest hits. It's from the Daily Mail, I think, this. Absolutely spectacular, although I did caption it, is this the moment Auntie Meghan arrived? It's probably the reaction of most of the royals. So that was most certainly in the thing. And talking of Auntie Meghan, she was caught, of course she was caught, because she was going to make sure she was, through the balcony for the Trooping the Colours. So this is the behind the back of the palace, that balcony, sort of was very much appropriately the reserve balcony, which is where she found herself, along with being in an outhouse rather than the primary balcony. And this is her having the audacity to tell the young royals to shush, because they've been yapping too much. This from the greatest yapper in the history of modern monarchy. So a little ironic, if you don't mind me saying.
Were you silenced, or were you silenced, or were you silenced?
Was I silent or was I silenced? Exactly, yeah. It made me chuckle anyway, whichever way you look at it. I'm joined also by royal biographer Tom Bower, who is in central London. Tom, you've just written a book about the Duchess of Sussex. Don't want to dwell on her too much. I do want to ask you about the Queen, because it was a very, it was a wonderful day, but it already felt to me quite bittersweet as it was, because I just felt, look at this woman, she's 96. We're not going to have another Jubilee for her, unless she lives to be 106, which is unlikely. So this is really the last chance to say a proper thank you and celebrate her reign and her life. And it was all magnificent, but then tonight we get this sting in the tail that she can't attend the St Paul's service, which I know will be a huge blow to her, because she is the head of the church.
Well, you're right. It is very disappointing. But on the other hand, on the plus side, Piers, it does mean that Netflix won't get the panning shot of Meghan to the Queen. And that'll really annoy Netflix enormously. So there's always a bit of a rainbow.
I mean, on that, Tom, I have to ask you, I mean, my big objection to Harry and Meghan is primarily the rampant hypocrisy that accompanies almost everything that comes out of their mouths. And we saw this acutely when they keep preaching about the environment and about the need to save our carbon footprint. And then we discover they got here from California on a private jet. I mean, when they do things like that, I'm like, who buys this nonsense? Who lets them behave like this and thinks this is actually good?
Well, you get excited about that. I get excited about Meghan appearing in this extraordinary hat with a big smile and letting down the window of her car so she can be seen.
Yeah.
I mean, here is a woman who, as you know better than anyone else, according to you, lied 17 times on the opera show interview and hasn't yet apologised.
Right.
And why has she come here? Has she come here to apologise to the Queen? Has she come here to say that she's sorry to the Duchess of Cambridge? Or is she here to promote herself? And I thought her big smiles as she edged towards the window to make sure that the cameras should see her with her oversized hat was all part of the Promote Meghan show.
Yeah.
That's really quite extraordinary, I thought.
Well, it is extraordinary.
She played it for what it's worth.
Yeah, and it chips away, I think, at the magic of the monarchy, because they've already got this huge problem with Prince Andrew, and there's no doubt that scandal's been very, very damaging to the brand of the monarchy. The fact that the Queen's second son has had to write this huge cheque for millions of dollars to basically pay off a woman who was taking him to court over a serious sexual assault charge. That is unprecedented in modern times for the monarchy and a very damaging thing. But I also think what you're seeing, this turmoil, we're now seeing in the Commonwealth in many countries, I think you can directly chart a lot of it back to the Oprah Winfrey interview, where Meghan Markle made these serious allegations of racism against the royals, but didn't actually say who she was talking about, thereby almost bringing them all into the frame. And I think you're seeing the kickback from that.
Absolutely. Now, in my forthcoming book, which is out next month, I explain very in detail how the Cambridge's visit to Jamaica was predestined to be difficult, if not disastrous, because of the effect of Meghan and the racist allegations she made. There's no doubt that across the Caribbean and across other parts of the world, Meghan's allegations of racism resounded and had a terrible effect on the image of the Queen, on the image of Britain and the royal family. And to see her then smiling through the window of a car in which she'd let down the window and standing close to make sure that she should be seen in the on Horse Guards Parade today, without any contrition whatsoever, just shows what a brazen hussy she is.
Yeah. Well, your words, not mine, but I'm not denying them. Let's just come to Katie for a moment about the main event today was the Queen, and it was spectacular there. I mean, I really did feel moved by it. What did you feel? You've covered the royals for a long time. What did you feel?
It felt very special. I was commentating for the BBC, so I was in a little commentary box with Jamie Lowther-Pinkerton and Hugh Edwards, and it was an incredible experience. I mean, nothing beats that balcony moment. But I think there is a sense, you know, a Jubilee is as much about looking forward to the future as it is in being in the present and celebrating the present, and also reflecting on the past. And I think there is a sense of what to come. This feels like a final hurrah for the Queen, and I think for all of us, even, you know, regimental men of Jamie Lowther-Pinkerton status, there was a lump in the throat, and that is because she instills the pride that you're talking about. I don't think you have to be a royalist, but to appreciate what someone has done over the course of 70 years. She is a remarkable
Well, Johnny
woman.
Rotten, actually, from the Sex Pistols, who famously sang God Save the Queen as an anarchy song to get rid of the monarchy, even he said this week on my show that he has great respect for the Queen personally, which says it all, I think. Julie, we've got some clips here. These are world leaders paying tribute to the Queen. President Biden, President Obama and President Macron. Let's listen to these, because they're quite telling, I think.
Your Majesty, congratulations on your Platinum Jubilee. For 70 years, you've inspired people with your selfless devotion and service to the people of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. On behalf of the people of the United States, we send you our best wishes to you and the people around the world marking this momentous and historic occasion.
You are the golden thread that binds our two countries, the proof of the unwavering friendship between our nations. We are grateful for your courage, and we share the respect and love that the British people and Commonwealth have always shown you.
I'd like to think Her Majesty and I have formed a special relationship of our own. Certainly I can say that getting to know her was one of the great privileges of my years in office. And I learned so much from seeing the example she set for all of us who have the privilege to serve.
I mean, Julie, this reminds me of all the British Prime Ministers who've said exactly the same kind of stuff. They're all slightly in awe of the Queen. Even Donald Trump, the least humble man in the history of the planet, even he admitted to being slightly humble when he met her because his mum had been such a great fan of the Queen. You know, put her into some kind of historical context.
Yeah,
here,
I mean, I think you can look at sort of the Dalai Lama. It's somebody who unites and doesn't divide, and especially with the turbulence that we've all experienced over the past couple of years with, of course, Brexit and then pandemic, Trump, you know, who was very divisive. She's always remained this person who wants to unite. And so for me, she does have this ability to do that. And it does remind me of somebody like the Dalai Lama, who is about compassion and kindness. And I think that's what she will be remembered for.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree. And I felt that with the Crown today. It didn't matter what your politics were because the Queen isn't political. So by turning up, you're not making a political point because she's not interested in that. She wants to bring the people of Britain together, whatever your political persuasions. Kinsey, what does she mean to Americans, the Queen? And what do they feel about the next rung on the ladder, Charles and Camilla?
I mean, we absolutely adore the Queen. She is selfless, and I think that we really admire her dedication to service because we don't see that a lot in America. We're very, like, shallow and selfish. Sorry for Meghan Markle, because I feel like there might be some association there. But I think there is concern over Prince Charles and Camilla because Americans take the crown as complete 100% fact.
Yes, which, by the way, is not a good idea.
Yes.
Right? These are real people. They're not fictitious characters in a drama for Netflix. In fact, what Netflix should do is do a real one on the Sussexes.
Or put a disclaimer on the original.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And I do think that we still love Princess Diana, truly. We still love her, and we still remember her.
Yeah. Well, it's great to see you all. Thank you very much. Final word to Tom Bauer, if he's still there.
Indeed, I am.
Tom, just put the Queen into history for me, because I believe she's the greatest monarch we've ever had, followed by Elizabeth I and then Queen Victoria. What say you?
Well, I'm not a great expert on every monarch we've ever had, Piers, but in our lifetime, clearly. But, you know, before Queen Victoria, there were people like Henry VIII did quite a good job of
He executed his
Britain.
wives, Tom.
Yes, but
Have you cleared that with your wife? Because
well, Henry VII, well, let's go with his father. His father created the Navy. Charles II restored the monarchy. There have been a lot of kings. Monarchs are just fit for their age. We've been very, very lucky. And, of course, we look forward now to Charles, and until recently with some trepidation. And I think what has been very, very fortunate is that the transition from the Queen to Charles has been taking place over, 1 or 2 or 3 years now. So the sudden shock will not be the same when he finally becomes king. I think he's also changed. He's mellowed. He's not being as ostentatious and self-indulgent as he was. He's not speaking out as he did before. And he's got a gravitas. And I think the Queen, very rightly, from her point of view, said that Camilla should be the next queen.
yeah, I agree. And
that means that the transition will be smooth.
Yes, I agree. And
forward...
having met them, I think Camilla gets a bad rap. She's a terrific lady. I think they're great together, and I think they'll be very good for the country. So, Tom, thank you very much. Thank you to my stellar panel. Really appreciate it. Well, the Queen is to miss this year's Buckingham Palace garden parties, a mainstay of the royal calendar, in another slightly worrying sign that we're drawing ever closer to a major transition in our monarchy. The journalist and author Tina Brown has for decades had incredible access and insight into the royal family, and her new book, The Palace Papers, is packed with juicy revelations. And Tina joins me now. Well, lovely to see you.
Well, it's lovely to see you, and what an excitement to see Brian Cox in the green room.
I mean, the legend.
A legend. I miss
my favourite TV character.
Oh, my God, I'm a junkie. I just...
Logan Roy. I'm going to tell him, I have a WhatsApp chat group with my sons where I'm Logan, and I send memes as Logan, and they actually all want to be Roman. They all want to be the fun one. But we're going to speak to Brian obviously in a moment. Tina, what a book this is. I didn't think you could beat your Diana one. This is better in a way because it's so multifaceted, covers so many people. And right now, there's a really, I think, massive question mark. When you see the Queen missing all the summer garden parties, you know she's frail, she's 96, she's lost Philip, she's got all this stuff going on with her health. You think, we're going to have to contemplate the unthinkable. You know, for you and me, our entire lives, we've only had one monarch. And if she does leave us, what happens next?
It's a very worrying moment. It's a perilous moment. I mean, she's been on the money for 70 years.
It's amazing.
You know? I mean, we just can't imagine life without her. And I think it's going to be a massive kind of tsunami of, you know, grief and instability in this country, a kind of identity crisis. I don't think we know how to be British anymore without the Queen.
It will be a remarkable moment, won't it?
Yeah, it will be. And I think for Charles, it's a challenge. He's gonna have to be the one now to right this ship and to sail.
Is he up to the challenge? I mean, from reading your book, there's so many great stories about them all. And I think you've captured, from what I know about a lot of the personalities, you've captured them so well. Charles has been the king in waiting for so long. Is he up for this massive challenge?
Well, it's interesting. If he were ever to become king, this is the moment. Because, you know, his passions for conservation and climate change concerns, all of that stuff, is actually now absolutely in sync with his own people. So he's kind of come into his own moment of time, and he's going to have to be a transitional monarch. He hasn't got a great deal of time, and his role is going to have to really be to modernise and steer the ship to be ready for William.
His trump card to me actually is Camilla, who I know well. I really like her personally. I think she's been the one calming constant in his life, actually. But we're already reading that Prince Harry is planning with his book coming out this year, which may ruin the entire Platinum Jubilee, that his book may be targeting Camilla as a kind of revenge for what he perceives his father did to his mother.
There's a great deal of concern that that's what he will do. And I hope he doesn't, because actually I understand his bitterness because of the whole backstory, but Camilla has transformed Charles. I mean, the man looks completely different. A friend of mine who actually had dinner recently with them, Charles was actually, you know, stayed longer downstairs than Camilla, and he said he'd never seen a man so happily take 2 stairs at a time to go and see his wife upstairs.
Yeah.
The man is just unapologetically happy, and that makes a difference to him, you know?
Talking of happiness, is Prince Harry happy? I mean, look, my views about him and Meghan Markle are pretty well known. I'm not going to labour the point. You do lots of fascinating research in your book about this. I mean, you're pretty scathing about Meghan. I mean, you're sympathetic in some ways, but you're quite scathing.
I don't think I am scathing about her, actually. I feel that I've got inside that situation in a way that has a lot of many dimensions.
Sum it up simply.
Meghan simply didn't realise, didn't understand how different the monarchy is from the inside to what it looks like from the outside. From the outside, it's palaces, it's global tours, it's being, you know, adored, it's being one of the most famous people in the world. From inside, you know, it can be really dull. It is grunt work.
But she gave it 18 months. I mean, I just can't buy this. I think she's genuinely planned the whole thing. I think she thought, I'll come in, hoover up this prince, yank him back to California and become the new Angelina and Brad Pitt.
I think she thought, honestly, that she could play a different kind of princess, that she could actually... I don't think she went in there thinking, I'm going to snatch Harry out of there. I think she thought she was going to be able to be this global humanitarian princess. The problem was that Harry was actually, by that time, 6th in line to the throne. He's not, although he's a global superstar, inside the palace hierarchy, he's not really such a big deal.
I mean, I don't really have a clue. If they want to go and live in California and lead the life they want to lead, everyone should be allowed to lead the lives they want to lead. No one can force them to do what they do. My central problem with the situation now is that they want to keep their royal titles, which make them all the money from Netflix, Spotify and so on. They don't want to do any of the duty that comes with the titles, and they want to go on national television quite regularly and trash the institution of the monarchy and the royal family as a bunch of callous racists, which causes incalculable damage. I mean, you see it in the Commonwealth now when they're going on these tours and getting some adverse reaction. A lot of that comes back to Meghan Markle, the first non-white member of the royal family, calling them a bunch of racists, not saying who it was.
Well, I mean, I think that actually that Harry is on a pretty good mojo right now. I mean, because he started in...
Do you think so? He looks
He
looks like
so.
completely lost to me.
Well, I did think that actually for a while, but I do think just recently he's got his mojo back. I think that Invictus that he invented was a brilliant success.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I mean, this is his legacy, and actually for Harry, that should be his complete focus and brand.
But he doesn't talk to his brother, William, right? I mean, that's pretty clear in the book as well.
I think it's a very unhappy situation between him and his brother, and actually I think it's weakening for William as much as it is for Harry not to have that fraternal bond.
But they were a great team. That's the
They were a
sadness.
great
I mean, it
team.
feels like we've lost this guy. He doesn't look that happy to me. Someone who else is not remotely happy will be Prince Andrew. And many will say, well, he shouldn't be. The Queen, I thought it was remarkable at Philip's memorial service that she wanted Andrew to walk down the aisle with him. It was a really big statement by the Queen. I mean, I thought misguided, but actually other people thought it's her son and it was his father he was honouring. What did you think?
Well, I mean, what is so fascinating about the Queen is where she's always been able to compartmentalise sovereign, HRH, you know, the Queen, from mother, grandmother, and a private world. And actually, one of the things that I learnt during this piece is that in the family, they all know who they're going to see. Are they going to see the sovereign because they're going to talk about matters of, you know, matters of import to them?
Or is it mummy and granny?
Or is it mummy and granny? Now, like any big CEO, like Logan Roy's family,
Yeah.
I mean, they like to snip through sometimes.
I mean, he thinks he's dysfunctional, Logan Roy. Wait till you see the royals, right?
Exactly, but actually, it all works just the same as Succession. I mean,
there's some fantastic descriptions of public figures in your book, Tina. Who's this? Who you describe as an editorial swashbuckler, an 800-pound gorilla of British TV, and the young Lord of Misrule who revelled in transgression. Any clues?
Stand up, Piers Morgan. It is you. It is you. I mean, listen, you were the great sort of prince of the 90s, Piers. I mean,
less of the word, less of the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, the prince of the 90s. I mean, you were unbelievable. And actually, I still believe that your diaries are absolutely amazing classic, and I want to see them, you know, on ice and singing and dancing.
A movie, maybe?
You know, I think they are a portrait of an age, the 90s, which are unbelievable. One of the most amazing stories you tell in that diary is how when Princess Diana brought Prince William... No, you went to lunch at Kensington Palace
with William and Diana,
and Prince... I mean, think about it. Can you...
2 hours of everything.
2 hours.
And what struck me, William was 13 and she told him everything.
Everything.
Absolutely everything.
Well, that was what's so incredible. I
Yeah.
mean, can you imagine today, I hope it might happen, but I suspect it won't, that the Duchess of Cambridge would invite you and you, Piers, over to lunch
Well, if you're
with her
watching,
and Prince Georgie.
if you're watching, Your Royal Highness, I am available.
I think
They
you are.
actually send their kids to one of the schools that my kids went to, their sister school.
but it was an Ask Me Anything lunch, right?
No.
And you asked her anything you wanted.
You spend a lot of time in America, and as do I. Prince Charles is trying to woo his American fans. This happened to yesterday, in fact. He went to a school in South London and was shown how to throw an American football. So before we show it, look at Tom Brady throwing one.
That's cool.
Who's the greatest quarterback in the
drop out and play zone sometimes. Pocket protected. That leaves
Now let's cut to Prince Charles throwing his. Actually, not bad. I mean, I just thought that was good.
Not bad.
Given his age and lack of experience. Tina,
But
look.
you know who could have done that brilliantly is Prince Harry, because I was actually told, which is very interesting, that Prince Harry, the reason that he was such a great soldier, such a great shot, he has perfect hand-eye coordination.
Really?
Yeah, he is brilliant at throwing balls out.
Well, let's end on a happy note with Prince Harry. Tina Brown, The Palace Papers, it's a riveting read. Honestly,
Thank you, Piers.
I love the Diana book. I love this one. I'm going to read it thoroughly, gorge on it, not least about myself. Good luck with the book and lovely to see you.
Thank you, Piers. Good luck with this show.
Thank you.
Wonderful
Great to have you
see
here
Yes.
in the studio. We've been joined by Ant Middleton, British war hero, former star of SAS on Channel 4. It was way better when you were doing it, by the way.
I agree.
We've got you on to defend our country against the American media that we're going to be doing in a moment. What is your view about this uniform issue?
With Harry?
Because obviously, just to be clear, if you are a veteran and you're not a serving member of the armed forces, you don't traditionally wear a uniform, right? It's only serving members of the military. But the royals obviously have honorary positions, and as such, that's why they're allowed to wear them. Edward quit the Marines, but he gets to wear one because he's... and so on. The problem, it seemed here, was they made an exception for Andrew to wear his at one of the events. And I felt you couldn't possibly do that and not let Harry do the same.
Well, Andrew, it's controversial. You know, I don't really want to get into that debate because we all know, you know, our feelings and thoughts on that. But Harry served. You know, he was one of the lads. You know, he was heavily connected to the Special Forces. He actually presented me with my beret and belt when I got badged.
Did he?
Yeah, so I got badged, went to Paul, and himself and Prince Harry and Prince William were there, and they presented me with my beret and belt. And he was known to be one of the lads, and he served. He's been out to Afghanistan. He served, so rightly so, he should be allowed to wear his uniform. I have no problems with that. No matter what you think about him, you know, he deserves
I don't
that
think you
honour.
can take
He deserves
away...
that honour.
You cannot begrudge him full respect for his military service.
No.
He did 2 tours of Afghanistan, and I would never begrudge him that at all. I've got other issues with him, but that's nothing to do with his military service, which was beyond reproach. Stay with me, Anne, because we've got to get into this big debate that's raging across the pond. Here, of course, we've been in national mourning. The queue to see the body of the late Queen is 4.9 miles long, stretching from Westminster Hall to well beyond Tower Bridge. If you join the line now, it'll take 8 hours to reach the front. And, of course, his outpouring of patriotic fervour is not unexpected here in Britain. Neither is the sight of the Royal Guards marching beside a coffin bedecked by the crown jewels, perched atop a velvet cushion. This is what we do. But does the pomp and pageantry burnish Britain's image as a nation of history and finesse? Or, as some people across the pond in America think, have we all gone slightly mad? Is it just pomp and pageantry hysteria? Well, political commentator and columnist Michael Luciano and journalist and author Ann Coulter join me from America, and I've obviously got the star. Well, he's the former star, but he was to me the star of SAS, Who Dares Wins, when it was a show worth watching.
I do the Australian show now, so there we go.
Yes, and it's excellent because you're on it. All right, Michael Luciano, you're a columnist over in America, and you think we've all lost our minds. Why?
Well, it's the year 2022, and you all still have a monarchy up there. It does not have the kind of political clout that it used to, which in a way makes it even weirder because the royal family serves no real actual function, and yet you just kind of keep them around. But so I would say, like, here in America, we've lost our minds even more because I understand all of the coverage of the Queen's death and the ascension of Charles. I get that from a UK perspective, but we here in the United States, for some reason, are also all in on the coverage of the royal family. And
well, I think
all
it's.
of that
I think.
stuff.
Look, I
So-
think it's buyer's remorse for getting rid of George III, isn't it? You know, you wish you'd never done that. You've had a series.
Piers,
Let's
that's
be
the
honest.
thing.
You've had
Piers.
a lot of presidents, some of whom were great, and some of whom were complete turkeys. And each time you get a turkey, you think, you know
Totally,
what?
totally,
Maybe
but
we should have had George III and his bloodline and just carried on. You might have had King Piers by now if you played your cards right.
Yeah, no, the whole reason we fought the revolution is so we wouldn't have to care about any of this stuff, and yet we're still caring about it, and the media is in total overdrive. George Washington is rolling over in his grave. In a way, I guess
Serious
he's kind
point.
of
Look, I can understand why some Americans don't get the concept of a monarchy. What I find really objectionable is what some American academics have been saying. So there's this woman called Uju Anya. She's actually an academic at Carnegie Mellon. She teaches people, this woman. And she tweeted this: I heard the chief monarch of a thieving, raping, genocidal empire is finally dying. May her pain be excruciating. This woman is an assistant professor teaching people. Another assistant professor in Rhode Island tweeted she would dance on the graves of every member of the royal family, especially hers, about the Queen. Now, Michael, this to me crosses a line. And I would feel the same if anyone in Britain said this about a president who just died. What is wrong with these people?
Well, you know, some people just have had different experiences with the Queen and the House of Windsor more broadly, going back to, you know, a few centuries. So I can't really speak to the experiences that they have had and their families and their ancestors have had with the British monarchy. It is not something I would have tweeted, but I am not going to pass judgment.
Really? You're not going to pass judgment? You're not going to say that you condemn that? You think it's not worthy of condemnation that somebody who teaches students in America
I don't even know
says she wishes the Queen died of excruciating pain? Why wouldn't you condemn that?
Yeah. It's not something I would have said. It's not great. I don't know who that person is. I don't know what kind of clout they have.
Absolutely. Look, it's disgusting. Let's bring in Ann Coulter. And I think you like the pomp and pageantry of all the royals. I mean, so many Americans I know love it. They've been as obsessing about all this as we have. What's your view?
Well, I'm not quite an obsessive, but in response to Michael's point, I belong to an organization that celebrates my many, many ancestors who fought in the revolution that ended our connection to the monarchy. Yet and still, I don't want a monarchy here. Very proud of those ancestors of mine. But this is a country that did live under the monarchy for 176 years. I love the monarchy, not an obsessive. It costs less for Britain to have the monarchy than our National Endowment of the Arts and National Endowment of the Humanities. And I think you guys get a lot more out of the monarchy. I mean, the things they provide, I don't think it would be fun at all to be within the royalty. And I would recommend the wonderful movie Roman Holiday, which is a great movie, but really, really makes that point. It's a lot of work. They can't just, you know, poor Kate can never wear like a cut-off jean skirt and a crop top. She can't dress up all preppy. She has to look elegant and beautiful at all times, and she does. They all do. They are so elegant. They are role models, but I don't even think it would be a fun life, and they do it. And wow, do the tourists like it. And I really enjoyed the ceremony that was going on this past weekend. They kept cutting it away from it on MSNBC to talk about, you know, the evil history of colonialism. I would also add that the world was never so good as when the sun never set on the British Empire.
Also, the whole point about this colonial issue, let's bring in Ant Middleton again. The whole point, which a lot of Americans who are being severely critical of this Queen don't seem to understand, is that she took us out of this You know, she was the one that helped preside over bringing us out of the empire, decolonized a lot of the, the colonization. She should be applauded for this, not castigated and blamed for the sins of the past.
And that's what's ingrained in our DNA, that's what's ingrained in our blood, is where we are today. A lot of people want to go back a couple of centuries, and if that didn't happen a couple of centuries today, we wouldn't have the most open and welcoming society as we have today. You know,
when you see this
Queen
woman,
is our grandmother. She was our grandmother.
When you see this academic who's teaching people, saying that she hopes that the Queen's pain was excruciating.
It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And how she ever thought that was acceptable in the first place.
Disgusting to say about anybody.
About anybody, let alone a 96-year-old respectable young lady like the Queen. How they get away with it is beyond me. It's a good job she's in America, not in the UK. That's all I can say.
I just find it's a kind of repellent behaviour, and she's of classic kind of woke academic. Let me bring back Michael here. Michael, is there any part of all this which you can look at and wish you'd had a bit of this in America?
No.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Because I tell you why. I think what we feel here, and I've had this chat with American friends, what we feel is that the difference between your system and ours, we obviously have a democratic system of electing prime ministers and governments in the same way that you do with presidents. It's the same kind of thing. But the point of the monarchy, if there is such a point, and you could simplify it, would be that we have this continuity above the democratic process. These are unelected people. Yes, it's hereditary, but they all understand what their job is. And their job is to act as kind of comforter-in-chief to the country in bad times. And they do it, when they do it well, incredibly well. This Queen brought huge comfort and solace to this country for 70 years. And it's that part of it, I wonder whether, even if you don't agree with the idea of a monarchy, do you not sometimes wish that you had in America this kind of non-partisan, non-controversial family over the top of the politicians?
No. I have an innate aversion to hereditary aristocracy. I think the Brits, as well as the Americans, are hard-nosed enough to be able to do without such an aristocracy. And, frankly, I regard the royal family as I regard the Kardashians here. I mean,
what?
They are famous for being famous. They're very wealthy. There are too many of them, and I try to avoid all mentions of them as much as humanly possible.
I mean, you did, just as a country, your immediate prior president was a TV star. Reality TV star.
Yes, and I did not like that at all.
Right.
I did not like that at all.
So, I mean, your own democratic process is not exactly foolproof, is it?
No, it isn't. But, at least we didn't elect the Kardashians. I'm not sure we did much better with Trump, but no, listen, I mean, the best thing Charles could do is to end the monarchy, and he would be hands down my favorite monarch.
Right, well, that's never going to happen. And Coulter,
could I say, I think the Kardashian point actually makes your point, Piers. He's right. I mean, that's our royalty? These utterly tacky, disgusting people. You have a beautiful monarchy. I think you do make a very good point about having a nonpartisan head of the country, though I agree with, I'm sorry, is it Michael or Matt?
Yeah, Michael, yeah.
Okay, I agree with Michael that I don't want a monarchy here, but, I don't want bullfighting here. I do want it in Spain. It's part of what Britain is. And I think the colonies all owe Britain for the wonderful things Britain did to them, bringing indoor plumbing and railroads and educational institutions, and ending hideous practices like throwing the widow on the funeral pyre, getting the resources out, creating wealthy countries out of just third world hellholes. Oh, no. The reparations should be going back to Britain.
Do you know what? Maybe you should come over here and be a defender of Britain as your new full-time job.
I would like to. Could I also say something I really like about King Charles that I don't think gets mentioned enough? I mean, okay, global warming, blah, blah, blah. I wish he'd drop that. There are enough people covering global warming. We don't need him doing it. But one of the things I really, really, really strongly support, and especially having just recently been in London again, is his opposition to crap architecture and wanting to preserve the beautiful buildings and restore old buildings. London is such a beautiful city. I think it's the most beautiful city in the world. And you're going along seeing these old, gorgeous buildings. And there's some modern buildings that are cool and nice, but most of them are just pieces of crap that get thrown up. And he gets very little credit for that. He has excellent taste. I wish he would really hit that hard as king and save London from ugly architecture.
I never thought I'd say these words, but Britain salutes you, and it's played there, because I believe you have a great system too. Michael, I appreciate you joining me, and Coulter.
But now, welcome back to Uncensored. Me, Rosanna Lockwood, sitting in for Piers just for the next few days. Then he's back from his holes. And I know one story he's been following very closely, Trump. Yet more trials, more criminal proceedings, yes, more everything else. And of course, we had that mugshot seen around the world days since former President Donald Trump was booked and charged inside an Atlanta jailhouse. This picture of him has become a money spinner, would you believe it, for his presidential campaign. More than $7 million has been raised by his team. That's what they're saying anyway. They're selling T-shirts, beer glasses, bumper stickers, donned with the scowled face of the Don, the Republican frontrunner. So who is the real mug here? The man pat by the police, or the scores of people who've paid for their own piece of it? Well, to discuss that, I'm joined by billionaire investor Kevin O'Leary and by the founder and CEO of the investment company Point Bridge Capital, Hal Lambert, also a major Republican donor who switched his support from Trump to Ron DeSantis. So, gentlemen, thanks for making time for us this evening. Kevin, I'll start with you. I mean, there really was no other way Trump was going to spin this other than a money-raising opportunity, right?
Well, these are unprecedented times. We've never had a situation in a presidential election where over 90 indictments have been basically registered. And the trouble is, probably, if you're an anti-Trumper, I mean, you have to look at it from both sides of the aisle. It's the fair way to review this situation. It's so noisy now that no one remembers one indictment from another. So if another 100 indictments comes, it's just background noise. Regarding how it's moving the needle, that's the problem for both sides. It isn't. It doesn't seem to matter. The first election with Republican parties come and gone, everybody's still at 1% except DeSantis. He hasn't moved the needle either, and Trump remains the far ahead forerunner. And these indictments have not had any traction. So to actually monetize it looks like a brilliant marketing move. That shot, that mug shot, if you hate Trump, you want to wear it proudly. If you love Trump, you want to wear it proudly. And that's what they're doing. And it appeals, it seems, on the merchandising front to both sides. And that's remarkable. It really is. And so they're doing a lot of fundraising at the $5 to $20 level online. It's been highly motivational for the Trump base. And it really boils down at the end of the day to what happens in just a few states, as it always does in a presidential election. It'll be Pennsylvania probably that decides by less than 100,000 votes. What do those independent voters think? That's unknown.
As you said, both sides of the aisle really important to bear in mind on this, although in the UK we have a product called Marmite, which people say you love to hate. And I think when you're looking at the anti-Trumpers, as you called them there, they may even be a money-spinning opportunity here. I mean, look, there are some memes our producers have prepared about this. Let's take a look. You got him as the Joker here in a National Portrait Gallery or something like that. I mean, you know, this type of stuff seems to fare well for him, and it's stuff that he's used to, Hal. Talking about the money side of it, Trump is in need of quite a lot of money. I'm not talking about his personal finances. We've also obviously seen bits of tax receipts and things over the years. But in terms of his legal fees, astonishing at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it was reported he spent over $40 million just in the first half of this year. Some legal experts I've spoken to estimate it's going to cost him over $10 million a month going forward. That's a lot of money. And so he's trying to, you know, raise the small dollar money to pay those legal costs. So you've got people making $40,000, $50,000 a year, effectively subsidizing a multi-billionaire's legal fees. You know, it's their choice to do, but you know, it's not being spent to get him reelected. I mean, he's going to be spending most of his money on legal fees and most of his time. So I think that's going to be a real detriment to him. He gets all the free media. That's helpful, and that's what's kept his poll numbers up. But as far as being able to campaign and being able to actually get out and get in these states, he's going to. I mean, imagine one indictment. He's got 4. It's going to be a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, a lot of time with, obviously requests from legal on discovery and all those kinds of things. It's expensive, it's time consuming. And I think it's a real disservice, quite frankly, to the Republican Party and to donors for much of that money to have to be used that way versus being re-electing people into Congress or a president.
And I'll put to you, you mentioned the 4 indictments there. Kevin mentioned the sort of scattergun approach at the start when he was talking to us. Do you think if it is this sort of lawfare, as people are saying, this strategy is going to succeed or fail for the side that are trying to stop him getting into the White House, Hal?
Yeah, I mean, well, so far the polling number has gone up for him with these indictments. So that's been helpful. Will it last? I mean, we've got another 5 months until the first caucus there in Iowa. And, the Iowan caucus is very different. You've got to be there. You've got to be working the ground. The same thing with New Hampshire, the same thing with South Carolina. So it's not a national election. So we're not to Pennsylvania yet. And by the way, if we look at polling, the independents are not for Trump on this. So even if we looked at Pennsylvania right now, I don't see Trump winning that state. That's the problem I have with this whole thing is over 53% of the country thinks that Trump is guilty. So when you go into that with that number, that assumes those people are not going to vote for him. That seems like a losing hand going into the election.
Yeah, and Kevin, you were mentioning the polling. There's Emerson polling out latest. This is after these Republican debates, which of course Trump didn't take part in. Spoke to Tucker Carlson instead, but he was down 6 percentage points. DeSantis up 2 percentage points, but Trump's still way out ahead. And Kevin, what about this point that Hal brings up? People are entitled to buy a beer mug or a bumper sticker with Trump's face on it, but they're funding his legal fees, and they may not be millionaires themselves. Is there an ethics point in that?
I think there's a lot of ethical issues, but that doesn't determine who becomes president. Great politicians, great leaders, great generals, great preachers, great managers are storytellers. And at the end of the day, you go back to Napoleon. He used to sit around the campfire with his men and tell stories, and those stories emulated all around the empire over a few months. Today, that happens in a few seconds on social media. Nothing is more painful to watch than a boring politician. Trump is not boring. Now, you may find it just outrageous that a potential president has been indicted multiple times, but there are millions of people who simply don't care. And at the end of the day, it's one vote at a time. Now, if they did care, these polls at this point should have moved on the first set of indictments. We're past 91 charges. Nobody seems to care. Now, it may frustrate people that don't like Trump, and it must frustrate people that do. But at the end of the day, as I started talking about this, it's totally unprecedented. What happens next? Nobody knows. I will remind everybody that you cannot become the president and pardon yourself for a state charge. You can do that federally. So this idea that he's going to win the presidency and then pardon himself, that's not going to work. Some of these charges, like Georgia, are state-based. However, also unprecedented would be throwing a president or a former president or an acting president into prison. That's not good for the American brand. Many people speculate, even if he doesn't win the presidency, they won't put him in prison, because what does that say about America? So all of these narratives are happening at the same time, all of them unprecedented, and at the center of it, a masterful, genius storyteller that sucks the oxygen out of all of his competitors. And people keep saying, don't worry, that'll change. Not so far.
Well, if he doesn't get put in prison, what does it say about the American justice system, I guess, would be the counter-argument to that. But here, your point on the storytelling. Hal, just finally, before we wrap up, one of these criminal trials now set for next year, early 2024, the day before Super Tuesday. What kind of effect is that going to have?
Yeah, I think it's going to have a negative effect. And I mean, we're going to possibly see witnesses turn against former President Trump. They've indicted a lot of people, so we'll see what happens there. But, you talk about being a great storyteller. What happened to Napoleon in the end? You brought up Napoleon. He didn't turn out too well at the end. But I will say that maybe the country's ready for more than a storyteller. I mean, look at DeSantis. He's there in Florida. He's working around the hurricane that's coming in. He's looking more presidential. He's not having to fight indictments. I think there's possible candidates out there like Governor DeSantis that can show leadership between now and the first caucuses, and people may change their votes because the majority of the country does care. Maybe the majority of the Republican primary voters don't care right now, but the majority of the country does. And we're trying to win a general election, not 50% of the Republican vote.
So you're back in DeSantis now, Hal. Kevin, Hal, thank you so much. Great talking to you both.